Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. It's now time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. The Supreme Court has voided the election of Emeka Ihedioha as the governor of Imo State. Arise News correspondent Chima Nwako says a 7-man panel of the Supreme Court, led by the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Tanko Mohammed, unanimously declared Hope Uzodinma as the winner of the March 9, 2019 governorship election and the validly elected governor of the state.
Cheers of victory. Justice Kudirat Kekereekun, who read the lead judgment, ordered that 3 things be done immediately. She ordered that the certificate of return issued to Governor Emeka Ihedioha be immediately withdrawn, that a fresh certificate of return be issued to Senator Hope Uzodinma. She also directed that Senator Hope Uzodinma be sworn in immediately as the governor of Imo State. After looking at the ruling of the Court of Appeal, the Supreme Court held that the lower court was wrong. Justice Kudirat Kekereekun, who delivered the judgment, said that the vote from 318 polling units, which ought to have gone to Senator Uzodinma, were unlawfully excluded and should be added to his votes.
We want to return all glory and honor to the God Almighty, that we are vindicated at the end of the day. Our position from beginning to this end has been that the case of Imo is very unique. It's different from all election petitions in Nigeria. Because whereas others were complaining about non-holding of election at the various units, Imo's election petition was about exclusion of votes from 388 units. The total votes amounting to 213,695 votes. This has been the case.
We want to say that the God of Imo State has spoken. Yes. This evening, distinguished Senator Hope Uzodinma has finally been declared the elected governor of Imo State. Yes. This is a story that has been in the communities in Imo State that Hope Uzodinma won the election. But with manipulations, we lost the election.
Earlier, the Kano State appeal was adjourned to Monday, the 20th of January, for final judgment, while ruling in the other appeals for Benue, Plateau and Sokoto states will be delivered next week. Chima Nwako, Arise News.
Well, as the report said, other rulings have been postponed to the 20th of January. Yes. So it's going to be sleepless nights for those governors between now and then, because this is quite a seismic judgment. Yeah. Very few people saw this coming, unless, of course, your father, Baka, who reportedly did. The rest of us were pretty shocked by this outcome. It's such a short term as governor that former governor now, Ihedioha, has served. It was mostly characterized with the back and forth between himself and Senator Okorocha. But he made an attempt to sort of try and boost the tourism industry in Imo State. It was all going rather swimmingly until this happened. And there are a lot of raised eyebrows. There's criticism, there's upset from certain quarters, as you can imagine, people who support the governor, and just generally Nigerians wondering how somebody who placed 4th can suddenly be declared the winner. People are wondering why the Supreme Court did not order a fresh election, but the Supreme Court cannot do that. That's not within their powers. We know that the apex courts in Nigeria, but they're not an election tribunal. That was held in the case of Right Honorable Rotimi Amechi and INEC. The Supreme Court will not order fresh tribunals. In his case as well, I think that was the shortest serving governor we've ever had, Omehia. That was only 5 months.
Celestine Omehia.
Yes, Rotimi Amechi was just declared governor. So obviously it's one of those things, like the report says, jubilation on one hand and absolute dejection on the other.
Well, I mean, many Nigerians found the ruling of the Supreme Court quite shocking. And for Emeka Ihedioha's supporters, quite frustrating. Especially as he had already settled down into that job and he had set a different tone and style to the relief of the people of Imo State, considering the fact that he took over from Rochas Okorocha, who was quite a very controversial governor, noted more for his histrionics than actual service delivery. And so this, of course, could be frustrating. But I've not seen a copy of the ruling. So many of the commentators have just been trying to anticipate the details of the Supreme Court. But it was a 7-man panel, and the decision was unanimous. which means that their lordships must have very strong grounds. And when the ruling is available, we'll be able to get more from this. But what happened is that the petition by Hope Uzodinma is based on the fact that, look, the results that have been declared at the polling units by presiding officers in 388 polling units were rejected at the collation center by the collation officers. And under, I think, Section 138 of the Electoral Act, and even in decided cases, it is only a tribunal that can, order the exclusion of results. If those results have been declared by the presiding officer and at the polling unit, then those results will stand until set aside by the tribunal. Collation officers at collation centers do not have the powers to, on their own, exclude results from certain polling units. Now, I've read a commentary indicating, and I guess it makes logical sense, that the Supreme Court justices have had to do what they've done within the province of the law. And that if we double check, eventually we may see that, in terms of points of law, their ruling is legally sound, even if it is confusing and frustrating. I think what happened at the end of the day is that the Supreme Court simply ordered that the results from those 388 polling units should be added to the result. Because those 388 polling units were told were those units where Uzodinma was originally in a comfortable lead. But where is the problem? Is it in terms of the competence or the diligence of Emeka Ihedioha's lawyers? Because the point has been made that Emeka Ihedioha's lawyers should have done a cross petition challenging those results from those 388 polling units, rather than addressing, the key ground for Uzodinma's petition in a statement of defense. And that since they failed at that technical level, then the Supreme Court is left with nothing but to rule the way it has done. Yes. Because, the court of law is not a Father Christmas province. What you have not asked for, the court is not going to give it to you. However, we have had cases also with the Supreme Court, being very radical, being revolutionary. But that's a matter of debate when there is a judicial review of the matter within the public space. Is there any other option left for Emeka Ihedioha? Maybe not, and that would be most unfortunate if he ended up losing this case due to the, let me not use the word incompetence, the lack of diligence on the part of his lawyers. Definitely,
it does look like there was lack of diligence on the part of his lawyers, but definitely there are also questions that one must ask about what happened at the collation centers to begin with in the first place. This is a very bizarre case, but fact of the matter is the Apex Court have now made their ruling, and it doesn't look like there's any option left for Ihedioha, at the end of the day. This is something that I believe is actually going to go down for quite a while as sort of an example, because this is what we talk about when we look into elections and we say what exactly is going on and where are the discrepancies. This was in everybody's face. This was something that was obvious. This is something that people had questions to ask about, and the Supreme Court have made their ruling.
I wouldn't go as far as to say definitely that there were lapses until we read the judgment. So let's sort of withhold judgment, our own judgment,
as a panel of three here,
on the abilities of Ihedioha's legal team until we see the judgment.
Well, fair enough.
But it is sad. This, for me, is the end of the road. The Supreme Court has spoken, and that's really that. And now Senator Hope Uzodinma is governor. Well,
I think at the end of the day, when a full review is done, there will be a lot also to be said, as you were trying to indicate, about the role of INEC, the Independent National Electoral Commission, and its officials.
That's the first discrepancy.
Yes, that is who should be blamed for me. But at this point, we'll take a short break, and we'll be back with more news headlines and the second half of yesterday's double whammy. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. We're still on the news headlines. The newly launched Southwest Security outfit, codenamed Amotekun, is an illegal outfit, according to the Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami. In a statement, the AGF says the setting up of the paramilitary organization called Amotekun is illegal and runs contrary to the provisions of Nigerian law. It also insists that the Constitution establish the Army, Navy, and Air Force, including the police and other numerous paramilitary organizations for the purpose of the defense of Nigeria. Now, this is just yet another one of those statements from the Attorney General that makes you, let me not say what I want to say, that raises an eyebrow. This, for me, is hot on the heels of that other ridiculous statement that he made about the government allowing people on bail, or court-ordered bail, out of their compassion and mercy.
That was terrible.
The fact of the matter is, as this day's report showed, there are 23 of these organizations in Nigeria that are similar to Amotekun. So why is he only pointing the finger at this particular one, saying it is illegal? I find that really bizarre. And the fact of the matter is, this is an APC government. The Southwest, of all places, is dominated by APC. We have, obviously, your state. Your governor is PDP. But the Southwest is dominated by APC governors. APC's manifesto, front and center, was federalism and devolution of the police force, giving governors more powers with regards to policing. That is on their manifesto. So this, for me, is in line with an electoral promise. I don't see why this same government, another arm of this same government, will want to frustrate this effort that really is being made to preserve lives and property. There's nothing wrong with this effort. It has had its detractors, its critics, this Amotekun effort. Even some governors did not turn up to the launch and what have you. But I do think they are trying, and they have to try. They cannot just sit back, fold their arms, these are the governors I'm talking about, and expect the Inspector General of Police to do everything. And I just find it, are they trying to just get us all killed at this point? People are trying to make an effort, trying to supplement the police force, the understaffed, ill-equipped police force. Everybody's trying their best. And instead of to be encouraging them, he's coming out to say it's illegal. What about Hizbah? Has he ever said that Hizbah is illegal? Islamic State police in Nigeria, a multi-religious state? I find this actually ridiculous.
Or you add to the list the vigilance groups across the country in various states. You add to the list also the civilian joint task force that was set up in Borno State, and which collaborates with the military and the police.
Exactly. So praise from everybody else. Everybody thinks they're so great.
To fight banditry.
Yes.
But I think that the Attorney General, in issuing that statement, raised certain points of law about how security, national security, is the exclusive preserve of the federal government. And he cited, specific sections of the Constitution. What can be done, is that now we have an opportunity to test the law. And I would like to urge the governors of the Southwest to go to court to seek a proper interpretation of the sections of the Constitution referred to by the Attorney General. It's not enough for the Attorney General to offer us an interpretation, which, of course, has been disputed by other persons who are just as knowledgeable in what the law says. But it is most unfortunate that, the same federal government that have been calling for collaboration, calling for greater responsibility on the part of state governors, will now see this opportunity and then allow it to be politicized, because we have had such comments that the Southwest governors are trying to create state police, or that this is a first step towards an insistence in the Southwest on restructuring. So the politicization of it, or what I call the politics of protection, is what is most unfortunate.
Absolutely. And what I don't understand is, at the end of the day, Amotekun does not even have the power to arrest, etc. They are going forward and they are going to be reporting to the so-called security agencies that the Attorney General went out to quote. Exactly. So I don't necessarily understand what he's trying to say here. But like you said, Doctor, this is the beauty of the law. The law exists, and you can put whatever interpretation you want to put around that law. And it's time for the Southwest governors to go to court and challenge what they believe in. At the end of the day, insecurity is our greatest problem. I believe I've said that on the show 3 times this week. Insecurity is our greatest problem. And here we are. Wednesday. It's only Wednesday. Thank you. And here we are discussing the Attorney General of the Federation coming out to basically say that we don't have the power in the Southwest to look after ourselves. Nobody is trying to overpower the police. Nobody told the police and other security forces not to show up to the launch or inauguration of Amotekun. They decided on that on their own. The entire idea is that this is going to be groups put forward that are going to go into areas that they can send, that they can then create reports on to send to the police. And yes, even if they are armed, it's for the protection of lives and property.
No, the police have actually said they must not be armed beyond Dane guns. The police have laid down the law.
Exactly. They're going to have certain guns. Yes. Exactly. There's no arguments there. So I really don't understand what the Attorney General is trying to get at here. Politicizing security is an issue that I don't even think... It's sad that we have to discuss that. I'd agree with you, Tundo, on the word ridiculous.
It is. And then he cites the Constitution when he feels like it. Where in the Constitution does it say, as he said, really shamefully, quite frankly, in the National Assembly, that the rule of law sort of has to take... National interest takes precedence over the rule of law. This is the same person now citing the Constitution.
Yeah.
Give me a break.
Honestly. Anyway.
On to sports news.
Yes.
Aaron, good morning.
Aaron.
Good morning, Tundu. You're getting off fire.
I'm trying to just sleep safely in my bed. Thank you very much.
Honestly. Tundu, you know you asked me why I wouldn't buy a house. Protection of property.
There you go.
There we go.
There you go.
There we go. Good morning, Aaron.
Good morning, Doctor. And quite a very eventful morning, I must actually say, in Australia. We know the bushfires have been ravaging Australia for quite a while right now, and it's even getting worse. And sporting events are being affected. And as we speak right now, there is a massive debate whether or not the Australian Open should be postponed, because plays have been stopped. Plays were stopped yesterday because one of the players that was participating in the qualifiers leading up to the Australian Open next week was coughing blood. And as a matter of fact, the BBC have just reported some 20 minutes ago also that qualifier matches had to be delayed for another 15 minutes, although the Tennis Australia has released a report that by today, air around that Rod Laver Arena and the Melbourne region is supposed to be clear and is supposed to be playable, and they're still monitoring the situation as the case may be. But the question still remains. That's been on the table. They say it's not even on the table. World number 2, Novak Djokovic, put it on the table and insisted that if worst-case scenarios actually appear, there should be talks about postponing the Australian Open. But as a matter of fact, Tennis Australia has insisted that whatever happens, the Australian Open, which begins next week in full, will go on.
Well, but I think what is more important is the protection of lives, which has been the major challenge since the wildfires in Australia started in early July. And we've seen great devastation in terms of deaths, in terms of even nature, animals being affected. And air pollution is particularly hazardous.
Yes, it is.
Doctors have pointed out that this can cause an hyperextension of the lungs and could result in breathlessness, wheezing, and even death, very quickly. And they've had reported cases of people dying as a result of smoke. There is a case of a girl at a place called Glen Innes, in New South Wales in Australia, 19-year-old. She went to bed, and then, because of the smoke, she got, asphyxiated, and she died. Well, she was asthmatic, so people who are asthmatic are even at greater risk. Even more notably is the fact that NASA has conducted a research, studying the smoke and the aerosols arising from the Australian fires. And NASA has pointed out that, in fact, the rest of the world is even at risk, because as of January 8, according to a report from NASA, the smoke from Australia had traveled halfway around the world, with neighboring New Zealand most affected. And they imagine that in due course, it will go around the world. So it's not something to be taken lightly by the tennis chief of Australia, who seems to be saying, look, this must go on.
The show must go on, yeah.
At the end of the day, I think that the lesson from the Australia fires and what we have seen in the Amazon and the kind of flooding that we have seen in Venice and other parts of the world is that perhaps our leaders would take climate action more seriously.
Exactly.
Now that, we're seeing increasingly that we are all at risk, and perhaps our leaders, world leaders, will listen more to the likes of 17-year-old Greta Thunberg.
Thank you.
Yeah. And another huge point that is being raised is that the Tennis Australia still insisting that they will treat this like they treat every other emergencies when it comes to rains, when it comes to heat, with the Australian Open, which has been quite prevalent over the years. Heat being case in point, it has always tried to hamper the Australian Open. They say they have retractable roofs in their 3 major courts, the Rod Laver, the Melbourne court, and the Margaret courts. So you look at all this and they say that worst case scenario, they would have to probably close the roof and ensure that the air there is breathable, although they claim they will still be monitoring the situation as it goes. But they insist that this is what happens when TV rights, people have collected money for TV rights, and they have obligations to do some things, and they just feel that the obligations must be met at all costs.
Well, the risk even at the cost of human life.
It's rather unfortunate.
The risk they run is that some of the players may just decide to pull out.
Yeah.
Because many of them have complained bitterly.
Yeah, but as it is, we've seen the likes of Mara Sharapova in the qualifiers. Rafael Nadal some days ago also was practicing there. It's only Novak Djokovic that has been bold enough to speak out against this. People like Rafael Nadal, Roger Federer will be having, and they are going to be having a kind of charity event today to try to raise monies for the Australia wildfires. But nevertheless, it's only been one major player that has spoken out against this. The rest of them have been silent and have just gone on with pre-tournament activities leading up to the Australian Open.
Well, let's hope that the fires don't increase further.
Yes,
between now and February 2, when the Australian Open will close.
Yes, because that was a shocking picture to see on the screen of all the smoke going above the tennis court. That was really, really shocking to see.
Really sad, but we'll be monitoring the situation and let's see how it happens. And we hope more incidences don't occur as the day goes by.
Anyway, Aaron, let's take a quick break. When we return, the conversation will continue. We'll be right back. It's still the Morning Show. Welcome back to the Morning Show here on the Arise News channel. Still with us in the studio is Arise News sports analyst Aaron Akirijola, who has been talking about sports stories around the world.
Yes, Doctor, and moving away from Australia, let's touch on the controversy that is brewing in Germany. And there is a young player that has been feeling the wrath of the press. Literally, the fourth estate of the realm in Germany are going hard against him, talking about Jaden Santiago. And he went to Dubai. As a matter of fact, his team, Borussia Dortmund, and several teams went to, as usual, in the January period, they actually go for warm weather training, and they went to Dubai, Borussia Dortmund. And he decided to visit the very popular, I don't know if you visited the doctor in Dubai, the Salt Bay restaurant.
I can't afford it. The steak there is overpriced for me. So don't ever expect me to go to any of his restaurants.
Nevertheless, he felt he decided he wanted to splurge a little, spoil himself a little, indulge a little, and he actually did that and posted it on social media. And the German press have been hard on people that have actually been to that restaurant and will feel that these frivolities are not necessary. You make quite a lot of money. You shouldn't be rubbing it in people's faces. And Frank Ribery last year did the same thing, got a massive flag for that, and he too has done the same thing. And the German press, between yesterday and today, have been on overdrive on this, calling them names and actually vilifying the player for. He's just 19.
No, his money. Yeah. He can do.
But they claim it is his money, but as much as possible.
He went to a restaurant.
It is expected that you live a kind of, probably maybe like a kind of pious life, and not throw, because buying more than $250 a pound worth of golden steak and just showing it on social.
£258.
No, okay, I'm not a fan of conspicuous consumption. I find it really vulgar.
So do I.
When people do these things and post it on social media, but that's a personal preference. Those are my personal values. I think that should not be applied to everybody. Everybody can do whatever they like. And this young man is 19 years old. Which one of us wasn't a bit silly at 19? I think these people are forgetting what it is to be 19.
I think they're just choosing something to really pick on here. I mean, I agree with Tundu. I don't believe in spending I can't even say that word anymore.
Frivolously.
And I don't believe in showing it all over social media. But he's a 19-year-old football star, and he's going out and eating a $250 steak or whatever it may be. He's allowed to do it. It's his money. I don't see how this is even
it's not
a
only
story.
the German press that has been critical of Salt Bay and his overpriced steak. Even the American press. There was an incident in Miami, I think last year, whereby, some guys went to the restaurant and they were slammed with a bill of $3,000 just to eat, golden steak. And it ended up with the police coming to the restaurant. But these restaurants are very popular all over the world, and many football stars go there. And the special thing is the method of the seasoning. Yeah. When you put the salt and you do your hand like this. And, many other footballers have taken pictures of, I think, including Ronaldo.
Yeah, Ronaldo, David Beckham has been there.
Messi. So it's some kind of class thing for them. But I don't know how a 258 pounds steak will taste in the mouth, and that's what the German press is saying. It's not something that
it'll be tender and delicious.
If in the heat of the crisis in Venezuela, President Maduro could not even resist. He had to go there to taste the steak. Yes. I don't know what he's serving, but I don't know if it's public.
Next year in Dubai, you should seek out
I'll try it out and come and give us a review on the show.
1,000 pound steak.
Dubai, let's plug Lagos. In Lagos, we have restaurants that sell that Japanese beef, Wagyu beef.
Yeah, we can get Wagyu beef.
You have that in Lagos.
Here?
Exactly.
Yes.
Who are the people who eat that kind of beef?
They're there.
Really?
Oh, yes.
Nigerians?
Yeah. Doctor, let's go and test and try it.
You have that. Some people just like to splurge.
Some people like the high life, and that's okay.
If I want steak, I go to Toasties.
Exactly. I agree.
All right, so let's see what happens. The teams will still be training, and in a couple of days they should be returning back. But the player himself knows that certainly his days in Germany are numbered. And while some people are saying that this is almost like a tact to get himself out of Germany, and because he knows his days are numbered, he wants to leave. And we've seen players actually run recklessly. And probably Ousmane Dembele, another key player.
Yeah, but I don't think the club wants to release him. He's one of the best wingers in Europe.
He's trying to force the hand of the club.
He's become established.
Yeah, by becoming a naughty child and actually showing up late for training. Yes, that's what he's trying to do. So that the club gets
they'll get tired
of his antics and decide to sell him.
Well, he'll probably go to Chelsea. Maybe.
Okay, I don't know about that. Some people because he's actually hot property right now in Europe. Everyone wants him. He's just 19 and he's actually blossomed literally like a million stars. And a lot of people are actually queuing up for his signature.
10 goals this season alone. 10 assists in 15 matches.
He's been marvelous. But let's see what happens. Let's see how the rest of the season in the German Bundesliga actually plays out for him, which will now determine the rest of the season and whether you believe in Borussia Dortmund.
Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure.
We'll see you tomorrow.
All right, super.
So do we still have more stories?
Yes, let's go to foreign news.
Great.
U.S. President Donald Trump has once again defended his decision to kill a top Iranian general and slammed Democrats as weak on national security. Speaking at a Keep America Great rally in Wisconsin, the president said he wondered why anyone would want to impeach him, especially as the economy is on the up, crime is on its way down, and poverty is plummeting. Trump told the crowd that America was the envy of the world.
As we begin the year, our economy is booming, wages are rising, poverty is plummeting, crime is falling, and America is the envy of the entire world. And then our opponents say, we're not going to win. Let's impeach President Trump. Let's impeach him. Got the greatest economy in our history. Our military has been totally rebuilt. Let's impeach him. A few days ago, we took bold and decisive action to defend American lives and deliver American justice. At my direction, the United States military launched a flawless precision strike that killed the world's number one terrorist. You know who that is? Qasem Soleimani, #1 terrorist in the world. Soleimani was responsible for murdering and wounding thousands of Americans and was actively planning new attacks, but we stopped them cold. And frankly, they already started the attack, as you saw in Baghdad, on our very large embassy in Baghdad. That was already started. And I said to our generals, get there now. We don't want to have another Benghazi on my watch, on any watch. They said, sir, we'll be there tomorrow. I said, nope, you got to be there right now. Get them over there now. That's two. Hey, speaking of protesters, have you seen what's happened in Iran? The protesters are on our side. First time ever. Right? They're on our side. In fact, they put this big American flag on the street. And the Iranians, thousands and thousands of Iranians, were supposed to walk on it and trample it and step and beat the hell out of it. Every one of them went around that flag. They like Trump. They like you. I'm just your representative. But they like us. They like us. They haven't seen anything like that in a long time. They went around, did you see it? They went around the flag. They didn't want to touch it. They love America. They love our country. That's called progress. That's called progress. But the Democrats are doing everything possible to disparage what we did with the hit on this monster. You know, many of the young men and women you see walking around without arms and without legs and were done by Soleimani. That's what he loved. He loved the roadside bomb. That's what he loved. Thousands and thousands and thousands in Iraq, in Afghanistan, roadside bombs. He was the king of the roadside bombs. Great percentages of people don't have legs right now and arms because of this son of a bitch. Okay?
Donald Trump doing what Donald Trump does best, rallying his base, and very effectively, I may add. He hit all the points. And, you know, events have conspired to make that misadventure regarding Soleimani have turned it into an advantage for him because of Iran's massive blunder, which is, even to put it lightly, that debacle where 176 people were murdered for no reason. So he's actually looking really good. Obviously, there was some untruths, alternative facts, as he likes to put it. In his speech, he said under Obama, 300,000 people left the workforce. 5 million people joined the workforce under Obama. He was boasting that he's created 7 million jobs in his 3 years as president. Obama created 8 in the same period, 8 million. And Trump said Mexico is paying for the war. Mexico is not paying for the war. The war has nothing to do with U.S. and Mexico trade deals whatsoever.
But you know, President Trump's reputation, he doesn't quite have a lot of respect for truth, accuracy, or facts. Those are not important to him. What is important to him is strengthening his political base. And having not been able to get the support of the Democrats on the issue of Iran and Qasem Soleimani, what he's doing is going to the court of public opinion with the expectation that, you know, his own supporters will also help to sell the message. And as you said, he put it very well. But what I find a bit disturbing about this rally in Milwaukee is the fact that President Trump was using the opportunity also for name-calling. Yeah. Calling Joe Biden sleepy, calling Senator Sanders, you know, nasty Sanders, referring to Elizabeth Warren, Senator Elizabeth Warren, as Pochuntas.
Pocahontas.
Yeah,
yes,
know,
it calls her Pocahontas.
all kinds of names, you know, and I think that, you know, he could put his message across in a more presidential manner.
Yes, but he's totally unpresidential. He's ready to leap into the gutter and just go. He calls her Pocahontas because of a huge misstep that she made, claiming to be Native American. And he will never let it slide. He will never let her forget that.
Even Nancy Pelosi is not his favorite.
No, at all.
But let's take a short break. Yes. When we return, we'll continue with the headlines. Welcome back to the morning show here on the Arise News channel. Well, Tundum, we still have more stories, I guess.
Yes, we do. Now, 6 Democratic presidential hopefuls held their final debate before Iowa goes to the polls. Foreign policy dominated the opening, and it allowed the 6 aspirants on stage in Iowa to put some serious daylight between them on issues of war and trade. At every turn, the candidates found ways to distinguish themselves, something they had largely failed to do with so many hopefuls on stage in previous debates. This time, the smaller debate let voters see just how this batch of 2020 Democrats might serve as their commander-in-chief. Let's take a look. I mean, what were your thoughts? The standout line of the night for me was that one Elizabeth Warren delivered. It cut to the jugular for Bernie Sanders because they had that allegation. Well, she claims that he said a woman cannot win. And she said all the men on stage have lost 10 elections between them. The 2 women on stage, herself and Amy Klobuchar, have not lost one. So that's what people will probably remember. But it's really quite irrelevant to the germane issues of the day. It's just an amusing little soundbite. I don't know that any of them, for me, that's just what it is. I don't know that any of them performed in a way that makes me think, this is in the bag for this particular person. It could still go anyway, really.
Well, Senator Joe Biden, who is clearly the favorite for many people, put up his worst performance in the debate.
Yes.
And of course, he's not known as a debater, so people will not quite be disappointed because he kept making mistakes, he kept restating his points, he kept correcting himself. But I think the star of the night will seem to be Pete Buttigieg.
My guy.
Your
my favorite.
I love him.
He was able to speak eloquently, convincingly, and he demonstrated, a good understanding of the issues at stake. Whether he has enough political weight, this is the mayor from the South Bend, whether he has enough political weight to be able to stand up to the Trump machinery is another thing entirely. Amy Klobuchar also, did much better than she had done previously.
She did.
Senator Elizabeth Warren also did well, although, there was that tension between him and Bernie Sanders, the 2 liberal Democrats in the final lineup. But what we can see is Tom Steyer, the billionaire, was completely out of his depths.
Completely. I even forgot he was there.
I swear. I was about to say, oh yeah.
In my own estimation. But at the end of the day, we had 2 women and we had 4 men. But the fallout of that, argument between Sanders and Senator Warren is whether indeed America is ready yet for a woman president. Senator Sanders didn't want to go on record as having said, the presidency in 2020 is not for a woman. And I think that was clearly tactical. Before now, in the previous debates, there was a lot of focus on personality. But this time around, there was greater focus on policy, particularly foreign policy in the light of what happened most recently in Iran, trade, healthcare, the economy, and many issues that will give the public a greater clarity in terms of where each of these Democratic candidates stand. I think this is their last debate before the caucus on February 2.
Yes, let's take a look
at is have an international coalition. We cannot keep acting unilaterally. As you know, the nuclear deal with Iran was worked on with a number of our allies. We have got to undo what Trump did, bring that coalition together, and make sure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon.
I would leave troops in the Middle East in terms of patrolling the Gulf, where we are now, small numbers of troops. And I think it's a mistake to pull out the small number of troops that are there now to deal with ISIS. What's happened is now that he's gone ahead, the president, and started this whole process moving, what's happening? ISIS is going to reconstitute itself. We're in a position where we have to pull our forces out. Americans have to leave the entire region.
Someone new comes in and we've just turned the corner. We've turned the corner so many times we're going in circles in these regions. This has got to stop. It's not enough to say someday we're going to get out. No one on the ground, none of our military can describe what the conditions are for getting out. It's time to get our combat troops home.
So we really have to ask ourselves in the Middle East, what are we trying to accomplish? I agree with Vice President Biden. To do it, we should definitely be doing it in coalition with other countries. And I want to point out that as we do that, we're confronted by this issue, which everyone is talking about, but at the same time, there's a gigantic climate issue in Australia, which also requires the same kind of value-driven coalition building that we actually should be using in the Middle East.
Which is why it will be so critically important to engage leaders, including a lot of new leaders emerging around the world, and ensure that we have the alliances we need to meet what I believe is not just an American goal, but a widely shared goal around the world to ensure that Iran does not become a nuclear-armed country.
Absent preconditions, I would not meet with the, quote, supreme leader who said, Joe Biden is a rabid dog. He should be beaten to death with a stick. I count that.
Other than that, you like him.
Other than that, I like him, and he got a love letter from Trump right after that.
I actually find Pete Buttigieg so presidential.
I really do.
Yes, he did well. But again, let's also worry about the people who were not there, who were there previously. Cory Booker.
So sad about
Julian Castro. What's his name? Kamala Harris. Andrew Yang. You know, and they're not there because they couldn't meet the donor threshold.
Tulsi Gabbard as well.
Yes, yeah, Tulsi, yes. You know, you're supposed to have about 5% in the polls, have donors up to about 1,000 from about 20 states, territories, and Washington, D.C., and then have major donors donating within the region of $250,000 each. And even the standing arrangement, you know, in the center, you had the ones with the big donors, Senator Bernie Sanders and Vice President Joe Biden, and then on the outer wings you have, you know, Elizabeth Warren. You know, just in terms of how strong you are financially.
That, but yes, that was the arrangement. So they've done it with all of the presidential debates as well. They kind of put it like they lay everyone else in some sort of order.
Yes, in terms of certain criteria. And, so when we talk about money, too much money in politics in Nigeria, elsewhere also, you know, money is very important, and the election process in the United States is quite expensive. But who do you think at the end of the day will emerge in Iowa on February 3? Or rather, who is your favorite?
You know, Pete. It's always been Pete for me. I've been consistent about Pete, but I don't think he's going to win the Iowa caucus. I'm not sure. And I would have thought Biden, because remember Biden, before he announced, was a huge will he, won't he? There was so much anticipation. But his actual performance, his actual campaign has been a bit of a damp squib, quite frankly. But he still has a lot of popularity amongst black voters. So he just might make it.
Yes, well, Senator Joe Biden, I think, is the strongest in the lineup in terms of experience and record. Although some people worry about his age, but I don't think that would be a factor.
No, I don't think it's a factor. I'd say him and Warren are definitely my favorites, but I definitely see Biden picking it up in Iowa. I do.
So we'll find out
soon enough. Will.
Spanish regional authorities have said a massive explosion at a petrochemical plant in the northeast of the country has killed one person and injured at least 9 others, 3 seriously. A press spokesman for the port city of Tarragona, where the plant is located, said a preliminary investigation indicated the force of the blast killed an individual in a nearby neighborhood. The regional fire service tweeted that a man had died in a building affected by the blast. Emergency services said that 2 of the injured were being treated for major burns. So sad.
That's unfortunate.
Safety above everything else. This is really sad.
Rest in peace to the poor man who lost his life as well.
But you know how it is when things like this happen. There will be an investigation, and on the basis of the investigation, you know, certain lessons will be learned about how future precautions can be taken. And then, of course, the persons who have lost their lives, most unfortunately, these other jurisdictions, there are provisions to compensate family or to take care of certain other business. But, you know, it's unlike here, where accidents occur, and we just say it's an act of God, and everybody moves on the following morning.
Absolutely. It's really sad.